Well, hello, everybody. This is Jan Rutherford with Self-Reliant Leadership. I know you're expecting Cheryl Tullis, and here she is. It's not going to be me. It's going to be Cheryl. I wanted to introduce my great friend, Cheryl. Met her a number of years ago in Seattle, and Cheryl is part of the Self-Reliant Leadership team, and she's just cool. That's what I think of Cheryl. She's just cool. She's been on a couple of our Crucible expeditions, and most recently, we had one in Moab last May that was all women except for me and one other person. And it was just a tremendous adventure. And we thought it would be great to come back after 2 years and really talk about power and influence, because it comes up in our coaching and our workshops every single day. So I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl and remove myself. And I'm going to be the person that really helps her in the background. And Cheryl will just tell me what to do. And Cheryl, it's all you.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks to everybody for taking time out of your week to talk about power and influence. So I want to practice right now and warm up. Chat your location and your favorite restaurant. Go ahead and drop that in the chat right now.
Okay, and we know there's always a little bit of a delay, so we won't be able to see that right away because we're on time delay in case you say something, Cheryl.
All right, great. All right, so thank you for those recommendations. You are all local influencers now, and I have a lot of new restaurants to try when I travel. We have a large group today, so I'm calling an audible on the format. Today, we're going to do an overview of the laws of power, and then we're going to have a deeper dive second session, as well as a mastermind group to continue the discussion. If you attended my workshop a couple of years ago, this will be a bit of a refresher for you, some new things, but then I invite you to come to that second session or join the mastermind group so that we can dive deeper. Now, for presentation, I have to be in presentation only mode, and I can't see anyone's facial expressions. So I'm going to ask of you to please exercise your power and your voice by interacting in the chat. All right, let's practice with a speed round. Y for yes, N for no. Drop a Y in the chat if you've ever felt left out of a conversation at work. Any Ys? Anybody ever felt left out of a conversation? Now drop a Y in the chat if you've ever felt excluded from the inner circle. Be bold. Have you ever been overlooked for a promotion? Drop a Y in the chat. Well, I can tell you, I have felt each of these things. So we're going to talk about some strategies to help you have a seat at the table. First, let's define power. In the group chat, say what power means to you in 5 words. I feel like I'm on the International Space Station and there's a time delay. All right, what does power mean to you? While those are coming in, I'm going to level set on how I'm defining it for this session. And these are very official definitions from the gospel of the interwebs. Power is the ability to produce an effect, control, authority, or influence over others. And influence is causing that effect in an indirect way, call it sway, without apparent exertion of force. So the difference between power and influence is subtle, but influence is a more indirect route. You may not have position power, you may not be in charge of the team, but you might have influence over the team. I love what I'm seeing about self-confidence, strength, and courage, because those are all part of power and influence. So, are either of these innately good or bad? Is the need for power an evil motivation that's driven by greed, like Dr. Evil? Or is it just a worthy path to achieve your goals? We're going to go that second way. Now I want to picture what power looks like. So, in the form of a powerful person you admire, what is it that you admire about them? Drop in the group chat someone you admire in power and what you admire about them. Just a key trait. I had somebody once tell me Attila the Hun. I'm not sure how to feel about that. All right, we're going to wait for these responses to come in. So while they're coming in, I want to talk about why we need power. To have a seat at the table, to feel more in control, to get the resources we need to do our jobs, to reach our goals, to build our brand, maybe to do good in the world. Lots of other reasons. Yeah, this last chat said use power for good. Humility helps others. Exactly. So, how do we get power? Well, the truth is, power is rarely given. We have to claim power. No one just gives it to us. We earn our opportunities, but we take our power. So, let me illustrate this. Has anyone ever driven in New York City? The first time I rented a car there, I was trying to navigate to the George Washington Bridge, and this was back in the dark ages when I was using paper maps. So I dutifully tried to use my turn signal to indicate changing lanes. That was a rookie mistake. Blinkers are a sign of weakness in New York. Fellow drivers seized on that weakness and they blocked me out. I missed my turn and I ended up doing an involuntary tour of the Bronx. Well, I learned you have to claim your place in the lane you want. Now, taxi drivers do this all the time. They just start edging in until they take their place. No one stops and leaves a gap for them. No one lets them in. They just have to make their move. So, how do we make ours? Well, I'm going to give you 7 rules of power. I first learned about the 7 rules of power from the leadership podcast, which Jan runs. He had posted an excerpt I needed to hear that day about how our teams count on us to use our power. Jan was interviewing Jeffrey Pfeffer, a professor of organizational behavior at Stanford. And in his book, The 7 Rules of Power, he says we need to stop seeing the world as a just and fair place. We have to actively develop the qualities that we need to achieve power. It's not enough just to be smart, likable, and effective, which is how most of us want to be judged. But to get things done, leaders have to learn how to amass and retain power. And he says if power is to be used for good, more good people need power. So here are the keys to moving up in an organization. Let's dive in. Number 1, get out of your own way. Now, I have definitely thrown up my own barriers in the past. In fact, it took me 5 years one time to ask for a raise because I didn't feel confident in the value I was adding. I took on new responsibilities and I did negotiate for resources for the team, but I did not negotiate for myself. I was intimidated by my boss and I was trying to earn his approval instead of proving my value to his business. Once I finally presented my data, my boss didn't hesitate to give me a raise. But for 5 years, I had devalued my own self and I took too long to claim my worth. So let's look at other ways that we give up power. Here are the dirty dozen. 12 ways we give away power. A lot of us are so quick to dismiss our own ability and short circuit our own opportunities. So as you look at these, chat poll, how many of these have you done in the last month? Reflect on that. How many of these have you actually done in the last month? Now, what events trigger you to do it? Because once we recognize our own responses, that's the first step to reclaiming power. Now, chat one of the ways that you've given up power in the last month. Remember, this is the first step to improving, is recognizing. Did you downplay your title? Did you give credit to someone else or brush off a compliment? Apologize for your point of view? Finish your statement with, does that make sense? Have you not put your hat in the ring for a promotion? Did somebody else get it who wasn't as well qualified? How about saying no? All right, I'm not seeing any chat responses. Here we go. There we go, not saying no. Me too, Amber. Brushing off compliments. Yeah, it makes us uncomfortable. But that recognition is not only good for us, but as leaders, it's good for the team. So I learned something from another boss who was a former lawyer and he was a master negotiator. He said, no is the most powerful word in the English language. It's the starting place for all negotiations, but it's not easy for all of us. So when you need to decide whether to say no, ask yourself these questions. Oops. All right, here are the tests. If you're thinking of saying no, pretend you've already said no. Do you feel relief? Then say no. Do you feel regret? Well, then you should probably say yes. Then how does saying yes help your long-term goals or hinder them? When you look back on this moment later in your life, which option is going to be the more important choice? Because there's an opportunity cost with every choice. So hopefully these are ways that I can help you say no to the things that don't matter as much. Second rule is to break the rules. Now, ignoring barriers is kind of my jam. My first role at TA Group was pioneering the first ever program to train transitioning military members for technical roles. And they would get guaranteed jobs, guaranteed interviews at Microsoft and other Fortune 500 companies. It's a global program today, and I'm super proud of that work. Well, my title at my previous company was Senior Vice President, but TA Group called me a director when I onboarded. I said, oh, hell no. And I proclaimed myself Chief Veteranista. I put that on my cards, on my email signature, my LinkedIn. I had people introduce me at that. And this drove our head of HR crazy. Rightfully so. The title didn't fit their standard titles. And I had made myself a chief. I mean, the audacity. But soon, my peers were calling me chief and recommending me to be the chief marketing officer. That didn't happen for several years, but the seed was planted then because I rejected the title of director when I knew I was worth more. So what rules should you break? The next is to show up in a powerful fashion. So what does that look like? Like lean in, initiate a handshake, broad gestures, be expansive and take up space, self-assured, eye contact, have a resonant voice. Now, who do you know who's great at this? This person came to mind immediately for me. Oprah! You get a powerful presence, and you get a powerful presence, and you get a powerful presence. So when you're entering a room, when you're about to take the stage, when you're going into a tough meeting, I want you to just think, what would Oprah do? Well, I know one of those things Oprah would do is create a powerful brand. What does that look like? Well, I learned from another guest that I discovered on Jan's Leadership podcast, Jessica Chen. She's an Emmy award-winning speaker, a journalist, and she's a CEO of her own global business communications agency. And she gave lots of great tips in this leadership podcast number 345, and we'll send you a resource to that afterwards. But she talks about creating a career brand versus a personal brand. Here are 3 tips. One is to be visible. Show up. In an age of remote work, show up in person. Dress for your next role, the role you want, not the role you have, and ask for the strategic projects that are going to get you visibility. The next is to be memorable. Like, tell stories and add color to your speech. One great way to stick out is to have a spiky point of view, something you really believe in, but you think others will debate, because that'll get a conversation going and will help you to further explain your point of view. Whoops. The next is to be remarkable. It's not enough just to have people remember you. They have to share your ideas and talk about you when you're not even there. So think about how to make it sticky. The next rule is to network relentlessly. Now, I used to run a global networking organization for women, and I would watch people at events. Some worked the room, meeting and greeting, shaking and baking, and others acted like they were at a middle school dance, standing to the side and only talking to the people they knew. But the most effective networkers came with curiosity. They had a question or two that they would ask each person they met, and often they would ask how they could help that person. This is an idea I've applied to parties. My introverted husband and I play a scavenger hunt game where we have a couple of questions we take to the party, and we ask the people that we're talking to, and we collect the most interesting answers to share with each other on the way home. And this gets us both out of our uncomfort zone into a more comfortable zone. So, does networking make you uncomfortable? Well, go with a wingman or a wingwoman like Goose to Maverick. They can help you break the ice, and they will definitely introduce you in a more powerful way than you would yourself. This is Amy. She's not only an expert in data science, but she's an amazing paper mache artist or something. So remember, be curious and be remarkable. But what's the point of networking? Well, you want to find other power players. If you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, who are your 5 people? Are they powerful? Do they bring you new ideas and information? Do they help create opportunities and resources? Now, a pro tip to network is to build your own personal board of directors. Do you have these 4 people in your life? One is influencers. They might have large audiences or might be the leader of a group that you want to join. Connecting with these people can give your own presence a boost. Mentors are the people you reach out to when you need wisdom and guidance, coaching. Connectors typically are outgoing people that are well known in their industry, and they know who is who, what their goals are, and they're able to connect the right people at the right time to add value. And then finally, supporters. These are the people who are going to be there for you. They might read your website and proofread it. They might give you advice on dealing with a tough negotiation. Others might give you emotional support so that you stay optimistic and motivated even on those hard days. Now, it can take time to build this board of directors, but here's a hack. Join a mastermind group. Mastermind group members come from all sorts of backgrounds, and so you instantly have this team of people that can give you perspective and solutions to things that they've seen. So we're really big fans of mastermind groups, and we're going to start a couple right after this. They're a small group format, and like 6 to 8 people, and you can really dive deep into topics with them and get a lot out of that. They become part of your personal board of directors. All right, number 6 is use your power. I mentioned this was how I learned about the 7 rules originally. Jan had posted about the responsibility of leaders to use their power. When I read that post, I was feeling disconnected from my peers and my manager after 2 years of remote work. That casual information flow from the office had dried up, and I didn't feel like I had as big a voice anymore. My team felt this too. They started asking for news. They wished for town halls to get updates. They asked what my boss was thinking. The problem was I wasn't using my influence to help them stay connected and aligned. and they felt that disconnect. The truth is, people want to work for a powerful person, and it's up to us to use that power to help our teams. Jan developed a framework to help us think about 3 areas of power: personal, team, and organization. These are the 3 pillars of self-reliant leadership, and we coach executives on these so that they can hone their power in each of their areas: leading their self with ownership and grit, leading others with accountability and establishing a sense of duty to the organization and to each other, and then leading the organization. This is not only strategy and alignment, but also the culture that comes along with it, and collaboration, but also focusing on execution and results in all 3 of those areas. So these are the 3 areas to think about when you're thinking about kind of concentric circles of ownership and control and influence. Finally, number 7. Number 7 makes people uncomfortable. Understand that once you've acquired power, what you did to get it will be forgiven, forgotten, or both. But we see this in politics all the time, right? Infighting until someone takes power, then everyone gets in line because everyone wants to be associated with that power. If you're perceived as powerful and effective leader, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the point is that when you claim power, you free yourself to be able to accomplish the goals that you've set. All right, self-reflection time. Which of the 7 rules is most challenging for you? I want you to take 30 seconds and really think about this. We're not going to ask you to chat this, so this is just private to yourself. Which of these 7 rules is the most challenging? While you're thinking about that, what are the barriers? Why is it challenging for you to do that one? Do you see others who are good at that particular role that you're not good at? And if so, what can you learn from them? All right, now in the group chat, I want you to chat which of the 7 rules you can commit to practicing for the next 6 weeks. How will you be accountable to that? So which rule and what's your accountability? Is there someone you can partner with? Is there a coach you can work with? Is there some kind of measurement? Feedback from a team member? From a boss? All right, let's see those chats. We still have big delays. I'm still on International Space Station, not seeing anything, but they'll come through. There's a rule about writing something down too. It kind of cements it in your brain and you commit to it. So I hope everybody can take time to do this. All right, break the rules. Not sure you want to, though. I'm curious about that. What is it that makes you not want to break the rules? And often when I hear this, what makes me think, there's like a chain of consequences to breaking rules, right? You can go down the good chain and the bad chain. But it's important to think about what is the real impact. If you break the rules, what's going to happen? Is it really going to be, dire consequences, or are people going to forgive it? Pardon me. Angela, thanks for the detailed response. I'm going to counter this by setting up meetings with senior management, directors, and others who have worked their way up the organization. Thinking I can't do it or can't hold a candle to what others think I'm capable of. I love that because often we perceive, the gaps in our experience, but there's a really great book called The Confidence Gap or Confidence Code. And it talks about this confidence gap that especially women have when going for a job or a promotion. We tend to wait until we're 95% plus qualified, whereas men will do it when they're about 60% qualified. And so we have to think about what our aptitude is and not just what our exact experience is. Rule follower at your core. Hey, I was in the military. I get the rule following thing. It's a bit liberating to do it, but I still at the core am a rule follower too. And I have to think about, is this rule serving me now? Showing up in a powerful fashion. Amber, how are you going to show up in a powerful fashion? Like, what is one tweak you're going to make? And Inbal, what are you going to do to break the rule? Other people are going to get something out of your response. All right, while we're waiting for a few more responses, I'm going to move on. So, discussion time. I want to know if you have any questions about the 7 rules, and any, in your experience, any advice for others about following the 7 rules. Now, we are going to start a mastermind group, and we're going to do a deeper dive second session on, to have a discussion, a Zoom team meeting discussion on these in smaller groups. So if you're interested in either of those things, please send an email to info@selfreliantleadership.com. We're going to limit these so it's a smaller group discussion and give people kind of a forum to explore these rules and to get insights from others about what they've seen and what works. Amber, thanks. Intentionally interact with specific leaders in the room. Now, there is a strategy for that, which is where you sit. If you sit next to the leader, especially at the right hand, the right side of a leader, you kind of get that halo of position power. So this is literally taking a seat at the table into a power position. So think about that. If you tend to sit at the edge of the room or, kind of at the corner of a table, that's not as powerful. Sometimes sitting at the ends of the table can be like mom and dad, so that can be a power position too. But think about your position in the room. There's another thing that I noticed. I was chief of staff for the chief marketing officer at Microsoft. And so her staff was mostly vice presidents. And what I noticed in those meetings was hardly anybody was on their computer or on their phone or on their tablet. They did not take notes. Like that fell to a certain position. They interacted and they asked questions. And so, what I learned was like, it's not just about being present, but it's about not being seen as the note taker or, people who had too much else going on to pay attention in that meeting. So think about how you come across in that way as well. And if there is note taking to be done, share that responsibility. It doesn't have to be the same person every time, or people take their own action items. This is what I've gone to for my current team. Everybody takes their own action items. All right, what questions do you have about the 7 rules? If there are no questions, we might be done really early. I was intending to give you time back, but we have a lot of time. All right, if you are interested in the second session or in a mastermind group or in personal coaching, drop a note to info@Self-Reliant Leadership. And, just know that we explore how to be powerful in all ways. I really would appreciate feedback on this presentation and on what could be better for you. So if you would go to that form, either in the QR code or via the link, and give us some feedback, that'd be awesome. We're going to share a recording of this, and we'll share some resources with everyone. And you'll have an opportunity to say whether you want to be in the mastermind group or in the next session there. Jessica, yeah, you take notes as it helps you process. I get that. And so one way is to have a tablet where you're actually kind of like writing, so it doesn't look like you're doing email. The second is just to state it, like, hey, it helps me process to take notes. And if we're, really being inclusive of neurodivergent people, we want people who thoughtfully process and then kind of come back to the group later. So if that's a role you play for your team, that's great. Just let that be known as your strength. And I would say, take notes for you and not necessarily for the group. Another thing is most of the Teams and Zoom meetings have automatic note-taking now. So there will be an AI-generated transcript of the meeting, which is really great. And so there's really not much need to kind of take the action items and stuff. Teams also helps you do action items and to-dos as you go in the meeting. So people can kind of contribute real time to that. Yeah, Jan, can you drop a link in the chat?
And I'm going to add myself, Cheryl. This is really terrific. I wanted to ask you about this. A lot of what you communicated was all the ways that we give away power, specifically for women leaders. And, what I think about is that the teams out there are counting on you to have power. They want you to clear obstacles. They want you to provide resources. They want to ride your coattails. They want to help them get promoted. But I also hear sometimes people say, well, they decided, and you remember from our military days that they told us always give orders in your own name. You don't say, hey, we got to take the hill because the colonel said, and we're all going to die. You say we're going to take the hill because we're going to win the war. What might you say about that, where, at times you feel powerless, there's decisions that are being made that are passed down. How do you decide what to fight for, when to fight, who to fight, when you get tired of fighting? I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's about context. Like, everybody wants context. Everybody wants to know the why. I mean, the simplest form of this is if you are an airline passenger and your flight is delayed and you get information on why it's delayed, there's weather or the plane isn't here yet, or we had to get another crew, whatever that is. And, if you understand that, then you're able to accept the condition better. So if they're just silent and it's just delayed and delayed and delayed without explanation, you get really antsy. And I think it's the same with teams. If they understand what the context is, business conditions are tough. And so we have to go do this now. We have to pivot. Oh, this new priority came down and here's why. The market is changing. So I think just providing context and letting people be part of that discussion and understanding what the new goal is. Like, we have to change direction and go over here, but letting them input into what the process is. Like, what are the tactics and how do we get there? Because that was part of the military too. If an order came down from higher, then the leaders had 1/3 of the time dedicated to coming up with the strategy. And then 2/3 of the time was delegated to the teams to come up with the actual tactics. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, which is we should, take time. We need to set aside time to actually do the strategizing, but then have a lot more time for the team's input so they can get comfortable with where they're going and what they're doing.
Yeah, and if it's okay, Cheryl, I had one other question. And you and I have talked about this a lot on Crucible expeditions. The whole idea of confidence and humility, or confidence and vulnerability. And I've shared with a lot of people over the years that we had one particular woman leader on a trip that said, I'm not going any further. If we go further, we'll die. And we had this whole thing. And I thought, her turning the whole team around, I thought she would be, feel bad. She'd feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have pressed forward. Not at all. It was, what I observed was she was so confident she could be vulnerable. She wasn't insecure. And because she was vulnerable, she was even more confident. It like fed on it. And again, I don't think this is, a question just for, one gender, but, what might you say about, that whole balancing confidence and vulnerability, or confidence and humility?
I think a lot of people see vulnerability and humility as the opposite of power. And my opinion is that it does feed that power. And there's Jim Peters wrote a book about level 5 leadership. And level 5 leadership, that fifth dimension of leadership, was humility. People follow leaders who are humble enough to know that they don't know everything, and to ask their teams and ask for help. You asked me to do a podcast about vulnerability, and that didn't sit well with me. I didn't like that word until I looked up, the definitions, and the definition that really resonated with me was open. When you're open to new ideas, when you're open to different ways of doing things, when you're open to hearing about how things aren't working and how your leadership isn't measuring up, that's the power, because then you really get enough, you really get enough from your followers to learn and to improve and to make things better for them, because you don't get anything done unless they're on board.
Yeah, I think this has been really terrific. I just want to say again that when we do this, it's really great because it gets recorded on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn for others that couldn't attend, which is terrific. But what we really want to do is have Cheryl put together one with Zoom and breakouts and polling and interactive to the whole next level. So just let us know at info@selfreliantleadership.com, and we're going to get that set up pretty quickly. And as Cheryl mentioned, the power of a mastermind is just terrific. There's a lot of discussion among men these days that, they don't have any friends. And we know that's true. That's a whole other deal. But the other thing, we know leadership can be lonely. And the higher up you go, the more responsibility you have, the more or the less people you have to talk about things. So if we can help facilitate and put like-minded people together, we're happy to do that. So Cheryl, thanks for, putting all this together, and putting good vibes out there, and trying to help women leaders. Many of the women that were on the call today are people I consider dear friends. So I'm glad that they were able to experience Cheryl.
There's a lot going on in the world today, and it does feel a little out of control. And so it's more important than ever to use your influence and your power in the areas you have it, and to focus on those areas. Champion the areas that are important to you. We need powerful women and men right now.
Well, thanks again for being on. We're going to end the stream right here. And to everybody that watched, we hope that whatever channel you watched it on, you'll share it with some folks that weren't able to attend. And please reach out to us at info@selfreliantleadership.com. Have a great week, everyone.
Happy Q2.